countries that still follow the Western model. They get all high and mighty, you see, about the question of democracy, which is where I came in on the Nigeria ECOWAS issue. Now, I'm not an expert on Nigeria. I was vaguely aware that Tinubu had been elected as the president of Nigeria and that there was a dispute about it that was going to the courts. I shrugged that off, thinking, well, that is par for that particular course. But when I heard him preaching about the sacredness of democracy and free and fair elections in relation to his neighbor Niger, when I heard him as a saint, like Saint Francis of Assisi, talking about the absolute unacceptability of people coming to power in an African country, other than, by implication, like him, through a pristine election system, I began to look more closely at him. That's when I discovered he was the bagman. Yes, he literally carried a bag of hundreds of thousands of dollars of drug money in Chicago. He should have gone to prison, but instead he just gave the feds the money. Now, okay, that's a common or garden story in Chicago, which in the time of Al Capone and in the time of Joe Biden is a criminal hellhole presided over by Joe Biden's party for the best part of 100 years. It kind of happens. But when I began to think, how does a man who's a bagman for organized crime in Chicago end up in the president's house in Abuja? How does that happen? Well, I then discovered that probably it didn't happen at all. That not only was he a bagman for the mafia, he also stole the election in Nigeria. Now, even then, it was not my intention to get locked into a confrontation with him. I have many fish to fry. I have many conflicts, countries, issues to cover. And then I discovered that not one but two of the main newspapers in Nigeria carried an op-ed in the name of a Mr. Onoh, and by golly will he be saying Onoh by the time I'm finished with him, which was the most fantastically defamatory, baseless, twisted piece of journalism about me I have ever read, and believe me, I've read plenty. Not only was it littered with absolute falsehoods, it contained a spectacular invention which will cost Mr. Onoh very dearly in the courts in Nigeria, if those courts are still operating, as I believe they are. I believe that there continues to be a judicial system in Nigeria. And therefore, I have sought and will instruct this week solicitors in Nigeria against Mr. Onoh's defamations and against the newspapers Vanguard and Guardian in Nigeria. Who is Mr. Onoh, I hear you ask? Well, he was only the presidential spokesman to the bagman, President Tinubu. Are you with me here? I hope you'll follow me all the way through the legal process that I am about to embark upon. But much more important than trying to steal my name and reputation, this gang around Tinubu have stolen the great African colossus of Nigeria. the most important country on the continent, the most wealthy and developed country on the continent, the most strategically significant country on the continent. And then I began to look at all the other things that Tinubu could have had on his plate to deal with, rather than threatening to invade his little neighbor, Niger. His little neighbor, Niger, had only overthrown a corrupt puppet president who presided over this dichotomy, which is the dichotomy that afflicts most of the continent of Africa.
Welcome to my channel, where we discuss everything and all things politics, especially about the 2023 presidential election held in Nigeria on February 25, 2023. And the election was allegedly rigged in favor of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, the ruling party in Nigeria. And that matter is still in court, and there are millions of Nigerians who are still waiting for the courts to tell them who actually won the 2023 presidential election, since they do not believe that Bola Ahmed Tinubu won the election. While we wait, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the president, and he is running the country now, for good or for ill. You watch with me a former member of parliament of Britain, George Galloway. George Galloway has taken drastic action against some people in Nigeria in respect of his recent intervention on the issue of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, where he described Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president of Nigeria, as the bagman for Chicago cocaine mafia, and was wondering, how did such a man end up the president of Nigeria? Now that's his intervention led to another intervention. Okay? That intervention was published in the Vanguard newspaper and the Guardian newspaper. That intervention was by former spokesperson in the Southeast for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Dr. Josef Onoh. Josef Onoh, according to the publication by the Guardian newspaper, they say that he has given it back to the former member of British Parliament, George Galloway, who in a recent media report described Nigerian president as a bagman for Chicago mafia. According to the Guardian newspaper, Onoh, in his reply to Galloway, said that the British former MP is a deviant and an uncouth person who has outlived his usefulness in the United Kingdom and was looking for who to go down with. According to Onoh, Galloway should be wasting in an asylum other than constituting a nuisance to the universe. This was published in the Guardian of August 11 and in the Vanguard. But I'm reading you the one I saw from the Guardian. And I didn't want to bother you with the full details of the article because it contained a lot of defamatory statements, as Galloway himself admitted that they contain a lot of defamatory statements, so I don't want to repeat it here. But what is basic is that this Dr. Josef Onoh, who is the Southeast spokesperson for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, perhaps during the campaign, intervened. I don't know why he chose to intervene. Something that he has, the campaign council of Tinubu had already been, of the APC and Tinubu had already been dissolved formally. This job should have been left for Ngelale, who is the spokesperson of Tinubu, to respond to. But this man put himself forward for whatever reason. And he is from Southeast. Southeast, the same Southeast that Tinubu marginalized by giving them only 5 ministers, while he was giving double to other zones, for which even the Southeast Caucus had protested about. This Onoh that was overlooked by Bola Ahmed Tinubu has now put himself forward, and he is going to pay a price for his intervention. And his intervention was virtually, like the man said, defamatory, as alleged by Galloway, because he did not address the issue. If you read the whole details of this matter, he did not address the issues. Galloway, if you've watched the previous media intervention he made on this Tinubu matter, was talking about that Tinubu was a bagman for Chicago mafia. And Galloway even invited David Hundiyin, a Nigerian investigative journalist, legendary investigative journalist, who has also done detailed work on Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the alleged drug link in Chicago. In fact, in an interview that Galloway had with David Hundiyin, Hundiyin was even telling him that he addressed Tinubu mildly by describing him as a bagman, that he was more than that. You can go and watch the video of the interview between Galloway and David Hundiyin. Okay? Now, he didn't address the matter. Instead, he was doing personal attack against Galloway. Personal attack instead of addressing the issue. If you are a spokesperson, the job of a spokesperson is to give clarity where there are unclear communication, to give clarity. It is not for you to come and muddle the water or to start attacking the personalities or defame the people who attacked your principle. It is for you to take it point by point. First of all, you challenge Galloway. Is Tinubu a bad man? Convince him that Tinubu was not a bad man for the Chicago mafia, Chicago cocaine mafia. Convince the man that Tinubu did not forfeit $460,000 to the United States government. Already these are matters that are in court, Presidential Election Petition Tribunal in Nigeria. So why do you intervene on something you know is already in the court? Even the presentation by the lawyers of Tinubu at the Presidential Election Tribunal, they have never denied it, that he forfeited $460,000 proceeds of narcotic to the United States government. They have not denied it. Instead, the argument they were making was that they are trying to invoke sections of the Constitution to say that it had been over 30 years since that happened. Therefore, he should not be disqualified because of it. They had never denied, even the star witness that APC and Tinubu brought to the court, who is the Senate leader, Okpeyemi, when he appeared at the presidential election petition tribunal, he never denied that $460,000 proceeds of narcotic was forfeited to the United States government. So what are you defending? You have nothing to defend. So you chose to attack Galloway. Galloway that has a reputation to protect. Galloway that had been an impeccable parliamentarian. Nobody had indicted him of anything in the United Kingdom Parliament throughout his service years of serving in the US, in the United Kingdom Parliament. He has never been accused of corruption, of embezzlement, of drug dealing, or anything of that. Instead, you choose to accuse him and link him, accusing him of terrorism and all that because of his political views. And so many other things this Onoh of a man wrote against this man instead of addressing the issue. He said that Tinubu stole the election. Is it not the same thing that Peter Obi of the Labour Party is saying at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal? Why don't you defend that? Convince Galloway, a British parliamentarian, he was in the parliament for over 20 years. Convince him that Tinubu won fair and square, that Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, that they were wrong in challenging the outcome of the election. That is what a spokesperson is supposed to do. Give clarity where there are doubts. Put the record straight with facts and figures. Show him how Tinubu won. Show him that the European Union observer mission, that they were wrong in the assessment of how Tinubu emerged the winner. Show Galloway how INEC was able to generate the tabulated results that they were able to defend at the courts, how they declare President Bola Ahmed Tinubu winner of the election. That's the job of a spokesperson. It is not for a spokesperson to malign, to insult, to abuse, to ridicule, and often using unsubstantiated arguments and positions. That's not the job of a spokesperson. It is to give clarity, to convince everybody, both Galloway and whoever watches his program, that Galloway was wrong. That Galloway was wrong because there were evidences that was presented at the tribunal showing that the same address. If go and study the presentation of Peter Obi's lawyers, where it was clearly stated by Peter Obi's lawyers that the address of Tinubu was the same place. The address of Tinubu was allegedly the same place where they are dropping cocaine. That's what was presented in the court. You can go and read it, go and download it and read it. The final submission of Peter Obi's lawyers. Because Peter Obi's lawyers were using that to show that he was not just somebody who they just put money in his account, but that his own address was a dropping point for the baggage or for the narcotic. Go and read Peter Obi's lawyer's final submission to the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. And then come and challenge and then prove that Peter Obi and his lawyers were wrong. And they convince Galloway. So that Galloway will now have no reason, no justification to talk about the fact or to say that Tinubu was a bagman in Chicago for the mafia. That is what a spokesperson need to do. And this is a spokesperson that many people have not even heard about him. I'm just hearing about him as a result of this Galloway issue. I never knew that Tinubu appointed a spokesperson in the Southeast. In any case, how many statements had he issued on behalf of Tinubu? And what was the benefit of those statements? To convince people in the Southeast why they should vote for Tinubu before the election. Now Tinubu has made appointments and I didn't hear his name. So on what basis is he putting himself forward to defend what should be left for the presidency to defend? And now this man, Galloway, is somebody I have followed him for a very long time. He's a tenacious fighter. I can tell you for free, he's out to ensure that his reputation is not damaged. And I can tell you for free, he's going to take this matter up, as he said here. He just, according to him, he just made a small intervention. Because he said he saw President Bola Ahmed Tinubu pontificating on democracy. And he wanted to find out, this man who is pontificating about democracy, let me even find out how democratic his emergence was. This man who was pontificating about democracy and said he cannot stand somebody coming to power without following the due process. And he said that he discovered things that shocked him. He said he discovered that the man allegedly stole the election. Now he has threatened to sue Onoh and the newspapers that publish him, the Guardian newspaper and the Vanguard newspaper. And he's not joking. He's hiring Nigerian lawyers to do the job for him. He's a UK citizen. All he has to do is to bring some thousands of dollars. It will be enough for him to do so many things in Nigeria, because he's hiring Nigerian judges and Nigerian lawyers to do the job for him. And only God knows how much he's going to demand for defamation, because he has a history of taxing those who defamed him, and they pay heavily for it. So I think the Guardian and the Vanguard and Dr. Onoh, they better get ready, because this man is not your average Joe on the street. This man fought against the British system. He was one of the few white people that supported Nelson Mandela when he was in prison. He supported Fidel Castro. He has always been on the side of the marginalized. Go and check his history. He has never been on the side of the bourgeoisies. He has always been on the side of the people. Whether it is in Iraq, in Syria, in Israel, in Palestine, in South Africa, anywhere the marginalized are suffering, Galloway is always on their side.